Welcome back to another deck tech video where I break down how a deck works. Today I'm going to be going over a deck that I've wanted to rebuild myself for a long time, and that is because, well, I built it for a challenge me and friends did where we only built a deck with cards we had, and to put it lightly, it kind of sucked because we just started getting into Magic. So today I'm going to be breaking down the upgraded version. However, before I do though, if you could consider subscribing, it's free and you can always change your mind later. Now let's get into it. The deck that I'll be breaking down today is Hallar the Firefletcher. I really like this deck because it feels very Commander-like, and what I mean by that is that it rewards you for spending more mana on the kicker costs in cards. And yes, I know that that's kind of a generalization because kicker doesn't have to be mana cost, but let's be real, usually it is. This card is unique, and what it does is every time you cast a spell with kicker, it puts a +1/+1 counter on itself and then deals damage to each opponent equal to the amount of +1/+1 counters it has on it. So every time you cast a kicker spell, you're going to be doing damage to your opponents. This obviously means that we have two main goals. Goal number one is to put as many +1/+1 counters on Hallar as possible, and goal number two is to cast spells with kicker that actually help us progress in the game. So that being said, let's start with some of the cards that we'll be using to kick our opponents. The first type of card that I want to cover is the kind of cards that help us with our goals. For example, Inscriptions of Abundance. This is a card that can be kicked and also allows you to put counters on Hallar. It does both goals in the same card, which is very powerful. And that really will allow you to put out a good bit of damage just with one card. Now another type of card that I want to cover is the ramp we're going to be using for this deck, and well, two cards that I wanted to call out are Overflowing Chalice and Elfheim Druid. These cards are really good in this deck. Overflowing Chalice will give you a mana rock that you can kick and will continue to get more powerful the more times you can kick it, and Elfheim Druid will give you 2 mana instead of 1 if you're going to use it to kick spells, which is super good because you're going to want to kick a lot of spells in this deck. Another really cool ramp card that you could put in is Skyclave Relic. This is a basic mana rock, and if you kick it, you get 3 of them. So that's really cool, especially considering it also triggers your commander to give damage out on top of that, and it works towards progressing the game. I think that's one thing you really want to focus on when building this deck, and that is to find cards that work with your commander that do things you want to do normally, not cards that just happen to work with your commander. Now that I think you understand how Plan 1's going to work and how we want to use cards that we kick, but I want to move on to how we're going to get counters on Hallar. Some of the cards we're going to be using to accomplish this are Evolution Sage and Joraga Warcaller. Evolution Sage is one of those cards that's going to turn every land that you play into another counter on Hallar. Of course, you have to have a counter on it already, but that's pretty easy to accomplish. And Joraga Warcaller puts +1/+1 counters on it for every time it was kicked. So it's a kicker card that you're going to kick to get +1/+1 counters on Hallar and do even more damage. That's just such a valuable card, especially as a win con possibly at the end of the game. Now, I don't think I need to spend much more time on how to get counters on Hallar because they're pretty well established in Magic, and there's a lot of cards that can do that you can really use, and they're really easy to play. So, moving on. I do also want to mention one hope I have for this deck, and that is to win the game with Comet Storm. This is a card that's going to deal damage. You're kicking it, so your commander is going to also do damage on top of that, and it can target every player if you kick it enough. And I really want to use it because I think it would be such a cool way to end the game. So that's one of my big hopes for this deck. And when I say hope, I think it's quite possible. It's just, you're going to have the right circumstances to do it, and I think that'll be super cool. Anyway, this should give you a good idea of how the deck works and the cards that you need to put in this deck. And as for how it plays, it'll be a little bit slower to get started because it requires a little bit of mana to get started. Once you get that ball rolling, it can do pretty well. I think this is a very fun deck to play because of all the big splash plays you're going to be making, and that's kind of the way that I like to play usually. And I think that this is going to be all you need to build the deck. As always, a full deck list will be in the description, and if you like the video, consider leaving a like, and for more Magic content, subscribe. As always, that's all. Until we meet again, whether on this plane or another one, have a wonderful day.